Now, if you thought Labour were already in a sticky position politically, down in the polls and their vote being split by Corbyn's new party, well, just wait until you hear what Reform UK have in store.
Everyone that comes illegally will be deported, full stop, end of story.
Yes, that's right. Something to celebrate on a Saturday night. Mass deportations. Asylum seekers detained on arrival to Britain, put in former military bases and then potentially packed off to British overseas territories such as Ascension Island in the South Atlantic. No right of appeal. Goodbye, see you later, off you pop. The NHS, HM Revenue and Customs and the DVLA will also be required to share data automatically so illegal migrants can be tracked down and arrested. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage there outlined the plans in an interview with The Times today, where he said the immigration crisis poses not just a national security threat, but leading to public anger that he said wasn't very far from disorder. Farage's plan will be revealed in a song and dance announcement on Tuesday, but it starts with leaving the ECHR, of course, and scrapping the Human Rights Act. Two tasks that I argue should be relatively easy to achieve. Reform would then introduce a British Bill of Rights before leaving the Refugee Convention, the UN Convention Against Torture and the Council of Europe's Anti-Trafficking Convention, all done under the banner of Britain facing a state of emergency. Reform's plan is called Operation Restoring Justice, and a Farage government would build detention centres capable of holding 24,000 people, prefab buildings with canteens and medical facilities on site. Crucially, and this is important when it comes to the context of hotels, no one would be allowed to leave. No asylum seekers from God knows where roaming the streets of British communities. Farage said in his interview with The Times, they have no right to claim asylum. They'd be arrested and detained. They'd be put into disused military bases. Don't tell me we can't put together facilities for people to stay, because we can. They would be treated with a degree of civility, of course. They're going to be fed and watered and looked after, given medical care if they need it. Reform would also be open to sending people to third countries, including, by the way, reviving the Tories' Rwanda plan and doing a deportation deal with the likes of Albania. And they reckon Britain would have 5 deportation flights a day, 5 a day, on RAF Voyager aircraft if necessary. And all this could be done now, of course. They could do it now. Labour could do it, Sir Keir Starmer could do it. It just needs political will. President Trump in the United States has proved that if you have conviction to stop illegal migration, you can eliminate the issue very, very swiftly indeed. He declared a national emergency, he deployed troops to the southern US border, and thousands of people had their sealed status rescinded while police detained others. The US has just enjoyed 0 illegal migrant releases into the US for the 3rd month running. So, as I've been saying for many weeks now, it's time to stop getting bogged down in argumentative detail about where to house illegal migrants, what benefits and what rights they should have, who pays for what and what level of hospitality we give them. The country's had enough, and with small boat crossings rocketing and gangs not being smashed, as Labour have promised, the pressure now is on Sir Keir Starmer to play his hand. The pot is massive. It's the keys to number 10. Does Starmer call Farage and match his ambition? Or maybe does he get brave and become a political comedian once again and maybe raise him, go harder and faster to sort the problem out? Or, most likely, does the Prime Minister fold his hand completely by continuing on the same fruitless course and consign this Labour government to the dustbin of history?
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cybercriminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. but PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Well, I'm joined now by the director of the Afghan Human Rights Foundation, Mohammed Asif. Mohammed, good evening. Thanks for your company. What's your take on Reform's big plan set to be announced on Tuesday?
Good evening. I think it's just a dream like what Swallow Braverman dreamt. And when, Nigel Farage wakes up the next day, there will be nothing, He won't be able to achieve anything. Britain is not a lawless country. It's not Afghanistan. It is not Iran or Saudi Arabia or Cuba. There is the rule of law. There are judges. There is the judiciary. And asylum is a fundamental human rights. Anyone who enters in Britain and apply for asylum under the Geneva Convention 1951, he or she is entitled to claim asylum. Whether you are accepted or not accepted, that's another story, but claiming asylum is not a crime. It's a right under the UN Charter.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Geneva Convention, Mohammed, Reform would say that Article 32 allows, if the claim is, quote, manifestly unfounded, or the country, or the government at the time says that there's going to be a national security threat or somebody's committed a serious crime, they can reject asylum, and also they can get by the Article 32 by sending them to third countries. In this case, Nigel Farage is saying send them to the likes of Rwanda if they revive the scheme, or even Ascension Islands. So the Geneva Convention wouldn't count, as far as we understand.
Unless Britain withdraws from the Geneva Convention, then they can do whatever they want to do.
You can't leave it.
No, until you're a signatory to the Geneva Convention, you can't do that, because asylum, as I said, is not a crime. And when you talk about security threat, people who come on dinghies on the back of the lorries, the security threat comes from the man in suit and tie, who are millionaire and billionaire, like what happened in 9/11 in the US, in the 7/7, and other bombings in Britain. These were not asylum seekers, these were not refugees. These were, millionaires supported by, quite well-off countries, and they carried out the atrocities. Someone who is seeking sanctuary, coming on the back of the dinghy is not a security threat. And I work with asylum seekers.
Some are, Mohammed, I'd argue.
No. Let me finish, if you don't mind. The Home Office have a kind of process, and I can show you the interviews transcript. They ask very, very detailed questions that what the person background is and where she or he comes from. When someone is a security threat, he or she is immediately arrested.
Well, that's not the case, Mohammed, because there was a lad, I forget the poor boy's name, I hope his family will forgive me. There was a lad down in Bournemouth who was murdered by a small boat arrival. The Home Office didn't realise he'd already murdered 2 people in Serbia, and on a night out, I think it was in Bournemouth, his name was Thomas, he went and murdered a British lad. There's also people, Mohammed, if you let me finish, there's also people who've been arrested, accused of sexual offences against children who were staying at the Epping Hotel in Essex. They've been accused and they're going through the judicial process at the moment. There's been other people, there's been Iranians who came on small boats who have been arrested for plotting to blow up the Israeli embassy. So I'd argue they're security threats, Mohammed, no?
No. One or 2 or 3 out of 30,000 people.
One is too many, Mohammed. For the British people, one is too many. How many is acceptable?
I mean, currently there is legislation in this country. There is the judiciary, there is the police, there is the enforcement agencies, there is the tribunal, there is the courts. If someone commits a crime, whether it's a sexual offense or terrorist offense or whatever offense, he or she should be punished, according to the law. You cannot judge someone because looks like me or look like someone else, and then you say, all of you are terrorists and all of you are sex offenders.
It's nothing to do with how you look like, Mohammed.
We do have the statistics published by the Home Office or the British government itself, and it says, how many sex offenders or foreigners in how many
let's talk about that.
Indigenous people. Yeah, but the thing is, you cannot brush just because you find one asylum seeker or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and then you brush the entire community to
Mohammed, okay.
and criminals.
I would
That's not
argue.
really fair.
I would argue one of those people is too many. Whether it's whether it's one British girl who's been subject of a rape at the hands of a small boat migrant, that's too many for British people. Let me tell you now. And by the way, hang on a minute. Let me finish, please, Mohammed.
Yeah.
Let me finish. You want to talk about stats from the Home Office and the government? The Daily Telegraph did a quite in-depth piece the other week using MOJ data, FOI requests, and so on, showing that Afghans and Eritreans, in particular, are 20 times more likely to commit sexual offences in this country than British people.
That's the Daily Mail and the Telegraph.
No, it's MOJ data, Mohammed. It's Ministry of Justice data.
It spoke volume when you quote Daily Mail and the Daily,
it was published. It was published in the Mail and the Telegraph. But it's MOJ. No, Mohammed. No. We're not moving on from this. No, we're not moving on.
When you
answer the question, Mohammed.
I'm telling you, as I say, Britain is not a lawless country. There is the rule of law. Anyone who commit, I said, if it's me, you, anyone else, he or she should be put behind bars, and that's the punishment. But you cannot, just because he or she's from somewhere else and suddenly you brush everyone with the same brush.
No, nobody's brushing anyone with the same brush, but when we don't know who these people are, they come on small boats, they throw their passports into the channel, their mobile phones, they lie about their age. There's been many cases of 30-year-old blokes in... What do you mean, no? When you say no, what do you mean?
I tell you this.
It's been filmed, Mohammed.
There is the Home Office process. They ask like over 200 questions in their substantive interview.
Okay. Are you saying there's been no cases of people throwing... Well, no, because you're not answering my question, Mohammed. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but there's two questions you've not answered.
When an asylum seeker arrives in the UK, the phone is being seized by the Home Office.
No, they throw them in the channel.
No, they don't. And
Mohammed, there's footage online. This is are you going to deny that there's not been any one case of a migrant seen on film throwing their phones and mobiles into the channel?
There is always bad apples among the good ones.
Right. Okay.
But
there we go.
You cannot blame the entire community.
Nobody's doing that, Mohammed.
Because that's what you guys are doing. What Nigel Farage is doing. What Tommy Robinson is doing. What your channel is doing 24/7. Blaming everyone else for the failure of this government.
Yeah, it is. Look, I am the first person to blame governments of all colours for failed asylum immigration policy. Because if you watch my show regularly, which I'm sure you do, every week I'm on this Labour government.
No, currently the Home Office takes over 400 days. Over 400 days to process one simple asylum claim, either from... I
have one last question, Mohammed.
Yeah.
I have one last question.
Yeah,
Reform UK are leading in the polls by some way.
Yeah, but the elections are far ahead.
Hang on, can I just finish?
Yeah.
Can I just finish? Reform UK are leading by some way. We're seeing protests all across the country. People are sick and tired of not just illegal migration, by the way, now. They're sick of all migration. It's got to that point. What do you make of those genuine concerns from British people? Because it's not just me sitting here saying we need to stop illegal migration. We don't know who these people are. The British people are worried and concerned about this. What's your thoughts about the British people?
I mean, I understand, the worries, but the worries are the minority and led by racists and fascists in the front line. I know some of the racists and fascists in Scotland, who are leading the protests. I don't know in England, but I know in Scotland, the racists are at the front line. Those who are convicted for, domestic abuse, beating women, they're in the front line. But these are headlines that I said, what is his name? Nigel Farage. When he wakes up, this will be just a dream, because there is the law in this country. There is the judiciary, there is the court. Nigel cannot just, take a stick and everybody, hit everyone else and say, go back. That's another.
Okay, Mohammed, before I let you go, do you care about the concerns of British people?
I do.
Right, why do you just brush them off as racist then?
What we want is, you see, what the government does here in the politician, the likes of Farage and others, they put communities against communities. Rather than we work together, and poverty and discrimination, unfair pay, come together, stand, together, a united community, a united kingdom, and stand together.
Yeah, it's all very good. It's all very reassuring words. Yeah, thoughts and prayers. I'll tell you what, Mohammed, look, respect to you for coming on and appreciate it, but I respectfully say that you are behind the times. Nobody cares what skin colour you are, where you're from, unless we just don't know where you're from, quite frankly. You are behind the times, Mohammed. British people have had enough, and there's a reason Reform are leading in the polls.
I mean, the Reform is still like 3-4 years left for the election. I guarantee.
Well, good. Well, if that's all you can cling to, then...
Mark my words, you know, when election comes,
OK, Mohammed.
Reform will be way behind. I tell you this.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed Asif, Director of the Afghan Human Rights Foundation. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Right, let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former Labour Party Special Advisor Paul Richards, the journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, and the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley. Oh, who to go to first? Peter Bleksley looks like he's stewing. Peter.
You know what? These human rights people, whether they're members of organisations or they're human rights lawyers, never actually talk about responsibilities, do they? They talk about the rights of the people they represent, their rights to come here. And Mr Mohammed Asif seems to me like he'd quite happily transplant the entire population of Kabul into Britain if he was given half a chance.
Yeah.
The one line from your monologue that was so powerful for me was the country's had enough.
Yeah.
And that, in those simple few words, absolutely nails the position of so many people in the UK.
Yeah, even people, Linda, who weren't really engaged in news before or politics, didn't really have much time for who's running the government, and they suddenly wake up in Britain one day and they think, oh, hang on a minute, something's not quite right here.
And that's exactly right, because I would say for the last 3 or 4 years, we have been filling hotels with asylum seekers, particularly quite big hotels. The problem has come when you get these hotels like the Bell Hotel in Epping and like some of the hotels which I've actually visited, which are in small, quite put-together communities. Then there's a problem, because you can see, cheek by jowl, people who have an enormous difficulty in integrating with our culture and our values. Plus, we've seen an enormous growth in the number of people who come over on boats. The problem there is, as you say, Ben, quite correctly, that they have chucked their documents away, so we don't know where they've come from, we don't know what their past is, and that is what has led to the concern, particularly amongst parents and young girls.
Yeah. Paul, Reform UK, big announcement on Tuesday, mass deportations, detention centres, music to the ears of many of the electorate. Where do Labour go from here?
Well, there's an interesting story in the Sunday Times tomorrow where Keir Starmer's going to announce that judges' power to delay asylum cases are going to be taken away, and there's going to be these fast-track tribunals which will speed up that process.
But they're just going to be approved, aren't they?
As what?
They're just going to be approved. That's how they'll deal with it. So, yeah, you can come in, and you go.
I don't think so. I think the point is this is a deliberate attempt to get people out of the country that shouldn't be here in the first place. On the reform plan, I mean, it's unravelling already. He hasn't even announced it yet. He's saying start a detention camp on Ascension Island. 800 people live on Ascension Island, and there are 17 RAF personnel. So what are they going to do with 5,000, 10,000 people?
No, I think the detention camps were here in the UK. Detention
He's saying deport people to Ascension
Island.
You said it in your monologue.
Yeah.
You didn't mention, however, he wants to do a deal with Iran.
Yes, he said hopefully deals with Iran, with Iraq, to get these people...
The Ayatollahs. He wants the British government to do a deal with the Ayatollahs.
Well, I wouldn't care dealing with Iran. Just send these people back. Why should... Hang on a minute, Paul. Why should anyone care that we do a deal with Iran if they're taking back their people?
Genocidal lunatic regime, that's why. And they're our enemy, and they're funding all the people that are trying to blow up the Middle East.
Exactly. All the more reason not to have Iranians coming here.
Deal with them.
Precisely, because we don't want genocidal people coming to this country.
He's also announced this massive constitutional upheaval, which I think if people look at what that means, a British Bill of Rights and a sort of tearing up our ancient constitution, introducing all kinds of things alien to our constitution, like sort of written documents and so on, which I just think is balmy. And it's very weird that Reform are now the major constitutional reformers, because normally that's the Lib Dem nonsense, isn't it? But this is what he's proposing.
Well,
a major constitutional...
All of which is a response to your lamentable government letting thousands of people into this country every week illegally, and you're doing nothing about it. You're doing the previous lot as well, but you're doing nothing about it.
It's successive governments.
Can I just on that very point? Interesting. I think it's generic. It may be Phil, but I think it's generic. There's a video of him doing the rounds as a minister, announcing all the new hotels and saying what a great job he was doing of opening up more hotels and taking credit for it.
People didn't notice. Can I just say, people didn't notice this at first. And my family, who come from the western side of London, there were huge hotels hotels, for example, a hotel where I did my sixth form dinner dance when I was just a teenager, the hotel where I was a bridesmaid at my aunt's wedding, they are now full, still full of asylum seekers, and we've let it go unnoticed. And then one day a family member said to me, "You can pick them out, Linda. It's the ones with the barbed wire curled over the perimeter fence of the hotel. They are asylum seekers."
You call them asylum seekers, I call them what they are, illegal migrants.
Well, I don't care what you call them.
Okay.
I'm saying it's an unsustainable
we
system.
must close the hotels. We're all agreed on that.
Absolutely.
No, we must stop these people coming into the country.
We need to move on. You say close the hotels. They're going into HMOs, into streets up and down the country. That will be even worse for the people of Britain. I'll tell you what we need to do is stop them coming in the country in the first place, which I guess is what Reform is arguing to do.